Hey there, I'm Trisha and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be bringing you my reading rundown for books 12 through 16 that I read in 2019. The first book that I'm going to talk about today is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I got this book on audio to pick up where I had left off. I had started this about a year and a half ago, and I checked it out and had to return it, so I never got a chance to continue on this with the story. This is a multi-generational family saga about a Korean family in the early 1900s all the way up through like the 80s, 90s, and it follows the family as the generations move from living in Korea to living in Japan and the struggle to go back and even living in America. I can't even fully describe how amazing this was. I was not expecting to enjoy it, to be honest. I picked it up because I liked the cover, and I realized that it was a subject that I had never touched on before in my reading, and I wasn't sure how I'd feel about a family saga sort of story, and this was so well done. I loved the characters. The characters were incredibly well written. I loved how it jumped from a different family member to a different family member when we were following multiple family members that were all alive at the same time. I thought that that was really neat. How it touched on the relationship between Korean and Japanese people, their history. That was incredibly fascinating. A history that I had no idea about. So I really, truly enjoyed this, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in 2019 was The Silver Kiss by Annette Curtis Claus. I read this originally when I was in high school. It was a 5 out of 5 star read for me. It's a paranormal kind of romance, very short book, was written in the early 90s. I hadn't read it in a very long time, so I decided to reread it. I also did a reread of Blood and Chocolate, also by Annette Curtis Claus. That book I have a review discussion on. I will link in the cards for you. I ended up not enjoying this so much as a reread second time around. The characters were incredibly one-dimensional, and I didn't connect to the subject matter because I'm not a dark and broody teen anymore, so I had a hard time feeling the same emotions that I felt when I originally read it, so the connection just wasn't there for me. The plot line had a very odd pacing. The storyline kind of jumped around a lot. The writing was okay. It was, you know, fairly middle of the road. I ended up giving this as a reread a 2 out of 5 stars. I didn't particularly enjoy it. I'd give it a 2.5 for nostalgia. I don't think that some of this really holds up to today as far as standards for writing, character development, world building, and then also I was, you know, really frustrated that there is the use of the R word in here fairly early on in the book. I do want to mention that that ableist language is in here. The next book I read in 2019 was Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This is about a man who stumbles across a woman who is bleeding on the sidewalk, and he takes her back to his apartment to help care for her and heal her, and then ends up in a whirlwind adventure where he is taken down to London Below. London Below is for where we find the people and things that have fallen through the cracks, and it's for people who have been forgotten, and it's this very beautiful melding of different timelines and different technologies and different places even. It's incredibly fascinating. I'm really glad that I finally got around to picking this up, and I'm even more glad that I did this on audio because Neil Gaiman knew what he wanted to convey with this story, and I think he did a fantastic job of doing so through his narration. As far as the characters go, some of the characters were kind of one-dimensional. The main character does go through a decent amount of growth from the beginning to the end, so I really enjoyed that aspect. The plot on this was whimsical and fun, but a smidge confusing at times, so I found myself a little bit confused if I didn't go back and re-listen, if I wasn't paying quite enough attention to the audiobook. As far as the setting goes on this, it was really interesting. I liked the kind of mishmash feel of London Below. I know that that's what the author was going for, so I think it worked really well. It all seemed like one place, even though everything was pulled from everywhere. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I do want to mention several content warnings for this book. There is torture, thoughts of suicide, and murder. The next book that I finished in 2019 was Radio Free Albemuth by Philip K. Dick. I ended up checking out the audiobook on this from the library to help me get around to it because it's been sitting on my shelf for so long. Radio Free Albemuth is about Philip K. Dick, who has written himself into this own story, who is best friends with one of the other main characters. The main character in this is receiving radio transmissions downloaded into his head from aliens telling him that he needs to kill the president. So this is the 1960s and the president is pretty incompetent and he's extremely paranoid, and it has brought the United States of America into an extreme of kind of McCarthyism, very, very extreme monitoring of citizens and their political leanings and whether or not they're involved with Russia, and it was really intense. Philip K. Dick in the story is there with his best friend and, you know, trying to figure out, well, are these alien transmissions? Are they not? What's going on? And it was a ride. It was a ride of a story. So as far as the characters go on this, the characters were pretty one-dimensional. They were interesting characters, but, you know, one-dimensional. The storyline was incredibly hard to follow. I didn't really know what was going on, and I ended up not really caring for the alternate history sort of aspect of it. I had never read an alternate history book before, so the writing on this was, you know, middle of the road. It's not bad. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't, you know, the best writing I had ever read before. The narrator on this was pretty good. I enjoyed the narrator because of the feeling that they brought to the story. It felt like it was being narrated by somebody who narrates for true crime TV documentaries, but it didn't really redeem the book for me, so I didn't really enjoy this. I don't know that Philip K. Dick is the author for me. I did end up giving this 2 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I want to talk about in this reading rundown is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I have seen Jane Eyre movies and adaptations many times over. I really enjoy the storyline on it. I had never actually read the book. So I ended up doing this on audiobook. It's narrated by Emma Messenger, who is one of my favorite narrators for classics. I have enjoyed everything that she's done from Jane Austen, so I decided to go with her as the narrator for Jane Eyre. I really enjoyed this. I can understand why it's a classic, why it's so beloved. I love the characters in this. I loved the storyline in it. It lived up to my expectations above and beyond the storyline for what I have seen in adaptations. My only true critique on this was that it was a little long in some parts and it could have been cut down, but it was beautiful writing. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the insights into all of the characters, so I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. All right, so these are books 12 through 16 that I have read in 2019. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read any of these books and what were your thoughts on them. And now is a perfect time, if you have not already done so, click that little subscribe button down below if you'd like to see more content from me, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!